I just turned 18 when I first stepped through the glass door of that sauna. It was late on a rainy Saturday, the kind of night where the world outside felt distant, muffled beneath a veil of falling water. I'd spent hours pacing my small room, fingers hovering over my phone, rereading online reviews, trying to convince myself I wasn't about to make a terrible mistake. I wasn't out to my family, barely out to myself, if I was honest. And the thought of stepping into a place like that, one whispered about with both intrigue and warning, felt like crossing an invisible line, one I wasn't sure I'd be able to return from. But loneliness is a persuasive voice. After months of watching life happen to others, I wanted to feel something, to be seen. Inside, the heat enveloped me, a dense, heavy warmth that clung to my skin. The soft hum of music drifted through the air, mixed with the occasional echo of laughter or murmured conversation. Steam curled from hidden vents, rendering shapes indistinct, like figures in a dream. I moved slowly, clutching the small towel, around my waist as though it were armor. I hadn't known what to expect. Part of me imagined an orgy of bodies. Another part feared being utterly ignored. The truth was quieter, more human. Men lounged in pairs or small groups, some deep in conversation, others passing silently through the fog. A few glanced at me, curiosity flickering in their eyes, but no one approached. I settled onto a bench in the far corner of a dim lounge, heart pounding. The air buzzed with an unspoken energy, a mix of desire and secrecy. My gaze drifted, searching for an anchor, someone who seemed safe. That's when I saw him. He stood at the far side of the room, leaning casually against the wall, a glass of water in one hand. Older than me, late 20s, maybe early 30s, with dark hair pushed back from a chiseled face. He wore confidence, like a second skin, yet something in his posture suggested patience, as though he wasn't hunting but waiting. Our eyes met briefly. I looked away, flustered, but when I glanced back, he was still watching, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. My chest tightened. He wasn't the most beautiful man there, but there was an ease about him that drew me in. Moments later, he crossed the room with unhurried grace. He stopped a respectful distance away, voice low and warm. "First time?" I swallowed, nodded. My voice barely surfaced. "Is it that obvious?" A soft chuckle. "Only because I remember mine. I'm Mark." He extended a hand. "Eli," I replied, shaking it. His grip was firm, reassuring. He gestured to the seat beside me. "Mind if I join you?" I hesitated, then nodded. The bench shifted beneath his weight. For a few moments, we sat in companionable silence. I tried to calm my racing thoughts, hyper-aware of every inch of my body, every breath. Mark spoke again, voice smooth, words carefully chosen. "You look tense. You don't have to be. No one here expects anything from you." His kindness unsettled me more than if he'd come on strong. "I guess I didn't really know what I was looking for," I admitted. "That's allowed," he said gently. "Most people come here looking for connection, in one form or another. Sometimes it's simple. Sometimes, it surprises you." I glanced at him, caught by the hint of something unspoken in his tone. His eyes held mine for a moment, steady and unreadable. "Can I ask what brought you here tonight?" He continued. I hesitated. "Loneliness, I guess." The words slipped out before I could second-guess them. "I just wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere, even if it's just for a night." Mark nodded, as though this confession was neither new nor surprising. "I get that," he said softly. "We all want to be seen." His words lingered in the air between us, heavier than the steam. I felt a strange pull toward him, less about desire, more about the comfort of being understood. He shifted slightly, his arm brushing mine. The contact was subtle but deliberate. I didn't move away. We talked for a while, about nothing and everything. I told him about university, about the city that still felt too big for me. He shared small pieces of himself, enough to build a fragile bridge between us. Time blurred. The lounge emptied around us. Finally, Mark glanced at me with a half smile. "You don't have to stay in the corner all night," he said. "There's more to explore. If you'd like, I can show you." I hesitated, breath catching. Part of me screamed caution. Another part leaned forward, yearning. "I'd like that," I said quietly. Mark rose, offering his hand once more. I took it. And just like that, I crossed another line, one I couldn't uncross. Mark led me through a narrow hallway, his hand a steady weight around mine. The air grew warmer as we moved, the hum of conversation fading behind us. My heart beat so loudly I was sure he could hear it. We stopped before a door with frosted glass. He glanced back, his expression open, unpressuring. "If you change." "You're mine, just say so," he said. I shook my head. "I'm okay." Inside, the room was softly lit, a contrast to the shadowed lounge. A low bench lined one wall. On a small table sat a glass carafe of water, 2 empty glasses. The space felt oddly intimate, more like a quiet retreat than a place of fleeting encounters. Mark closed the door gently, then sat, motioning for me to join him. I lowered myself beside him, nerves prickling beneath my skin. He poured water, handed me a glass. "Stay hydrated," he said with a faint smile. I took a sip, grateful for the simple gesture. The silence between us was comfortable, expectant. Mark didn't rush, didn't reach for me. He simply sat close enough that I could feel his warmth, waiting. After a moment, he spoke. "You mentioned feeling lonely." I glanced at him, unsure how much to reveal, yet something about his presence loosened my tongue. "It's hard," I admitted. "I can't talk to my family about this part of me. Most of my friends wouldn't understand. I guess coming here felt like a way to break out of that." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "I understand more than you might think." He leaned back, his gaze distant for a moment. "I was 20 when I came out. It wasn't easy. Even now, there are days when the weight of pretending still creeps in." His words resonated deeper than I expected. I searched his face, wondering what else he carried beneath that calm exterior. "You seem so confident," I said quietly. He smiled, almost sadly. "Confidence can be armor, but everyone has their cracks." The vulnerability in his voice pulled me closer. Without thinking, I reached out, fingers brushing his. He didn't move away. Instead, he turned his hand, lacing his fingers gently through mine. "You don't have to be anyone else here," he said softly. My throat tightened. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then, instinctively, I leaned in. The kiss came slow, tentative, a question more than an answer. Mark responded with a tenderness that caught me off guard. There was no urgency, no claim, just the quiet affirmation that I was wanted, as I was. When we parted, he rested his forehead lightly against mine. "You okay?" he whispered. I nodded, breathless. "Yeah." We shifted, leaning back against the wall, our shoulders touching. For a long while, we sat in silence, content to share space. The heat of the room softened the edges of my fear, replacing it with something warmer, steadier. Mark began to talk, his voice low and even. He spoke of his first love, a boy named Julian, met at university. How it had ended badly, leaving scars that took years to heal. He didn't hide his regret, or the lessons learned. Listening to him, I felt something uncoil inside me. The idea that even someone like Mark, so composed, had once been as uncertain as I was, gave me unexpected comfort. I shared pieces of myself, too. Small admissions about my own hesitations, the pressure of expectations I'd never asked for. With each word, the distance between us shrank. At some point he reached out again, brushing his fingers lightly along my jaw. The touch sent a shiver through me, not from fear, but from the dizzying rush of being wanted. "We don't have to go further than you want," he said gently. "Tonight is about you." That simple kindness undid something in me. I leaned into him, resting my head against his shoulder. He held me, arms wrapping securely around my frame. Time slipped away. The room seemed to float outside of time, just the two of us suspended in its warmth. Eventually, Mark's voice broke the quiet. "Would you like to see me again? Outside of here?" The question lingered, rich with possibility. I pulled back slightly to meet his gaze. His expression held no expectation, only hope. "Yes," I breathed. His smile then was genuine, unguarded. Good. When we finally rose to leave, the world beyond the door felt changed. I wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but as I followed Mark through the now quiet corridors, hand in his, I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer the boy who had entered this place alone. The days that followed felt like waking into a world colored differently. Everything seemed sharper. Sounds, textures, emotions. I moved through my routines with a new awareness, a thread of anticipation humming beneath the ordinary. Each time, my phone buzzed, my heart leapt. Mark texted first, the morning after. "Had a good time with you. Hope you got home safe." The simplicity of the message belied the effect it had on me. I reread it more times than I'd care to admit before crafting a reply. We began exchanging messages, longer ones with each passing day. He had a dry wit that caught me off guard, a way of seeing through pretenses that made conversation easy. I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't with anyone before. It was as though the barrier between us had thinned, and now words could flow freely through it. A week later, we met again, this time at a small cafe tucked away from the main street. The space was dim and warm, its worn wooden tables inviting, the low hum of conversation around us providing a comfortable backdrop. Mark arrived before me, rising from his seat with that same easy grace, smile lighting his features. "You came," he said softly. "Of course," I replied, heart fluttering. Over coffee, we talked about everything. Books, films, the strange experience of feeling both too young and too old at once. Mark listened attentively, his gaze steady, making me feel like the only person in the room. When he spoke, it was with a quiet conviction that drew me closer, word by word. Afterward, we walked beneath the soft spill of street lamps, the city's edges blurred by the night. When we reached my stop, he touched my arm lightly. "I'd like to see you again," he said. I nodded, barely trusting my voice. Our meetings became a rhythm. Late-night texts turned into phone calls that stretched past midnight. Casual coffees morphed into long walks where our hands brushed, fingers tentatively entwining. Each small moment fed the fragile belief growing inside me that this could be real. Yet beneath the surface of those perfect days, small cracks began to appear. The first came during a dinner at a quiet Italian place. Mid-conversation, Mark's phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at it, face tightening for the briefest moment before silencing it and slipping it into his jacket. When I asked if everything was all right, he offered a strained smile. "Just a friend. I'll deal with it later." The second came in his hesitations. He spoke of wanting more time with me, but always at odd hours, always away from certain places. I convinced myself it was caution, a man who valued privacy. Still, doubt stirred at the edges of my thoughts. One evening, we met at his apartment. a sleek, minimalist space that felt more like a showroom than a home. We cooked dinner together, laughter spilling easily between us. Afterward, curled on the couch beneath a shared blanket, he looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "I haven't felt this way in a long time," he murmured. The words wrapped around me like a promise. I believed them because I wanted to, needed to. I pressed closer, seeking the reassurance his presence provided. Later, while Mark showered, I wandered the apartment, fingers trailing absently across surfaces. That's when I noticed the photograph, framed in silver, half obscured behind a stack of books on a side table. Two men, arms around each other, grinning at the camera. Mark and another man. Matching rings gleamed on their fingers. The air seemed to thin around me. My pulse pounded in my ears. When Mark returned, I tried to school my expression, but my voice betrayed me. "Who is he?" Mark froze, towel slung around his shoulders. His gaze flicked to the photograph, then back to me. For a moment, silence stretched taut between us. "Eli," he began, voice rough. "It's complicated." The words landed like a stone. My chest tightened, breath catching painfully. "You didn't think to mention it?" My voice cracked. He looked away. "I didn't mean for this to happen. You have to believe that." Anger warred with hurt inside me, emotions churning too fast to untangle. I grabbed my jacket, hands trembling. "Eli, wait, please!" His voice followed me as I fled the apartment, the door clicking shut behind me like the closing of a chapter. Outside, the night was cold, the city unfamiliar once more. I walked aimlessly, questions spiraling, heart breaking with each step. I thought I knew what we were building. I thought I could trust him. But now everything was unraveling. The walk home felt endless. Each step pounded with the same relentless question. How could I have been so blind? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the photograph, Mark's smile, the way his hand rested so familiarly on the other man's shoulder, and his words, fractured and evasive. "It's complicated." By morning, a brittle resolve replaced my confusion. I needed answers, clarity, something to anchor the chaos swirling inside me. I waited until midday before texting him. My fingers hovered over the screen, composing and deleting a dozen variations before settling on one. "We need to talk. No more lies." His reply came quickly. "Please come by tonight. I owe you the truth." The hours dragged, each one steeped in restless anticipation. By the time I reached Mark's apartment that evening, my chest felt tight with dread. He opened. The door, eyes shadowed, the usual composure stripped away. Wordlessly, he stepped aside to let me in. We sat opposite each other in strained silence. The weight of unspoken words filled the space between us. Finally, he spoke. "His name is Daniel. We've been together for 7 years. His voice was low, as though confessing to himself as much as to me. My throat tightened. "Then why?" I couldn't finish the sentence. Mark ran a hand through his hair. "Things haven't been good between us for a while. We've been disconnected. I thought I could keep this separate, that it wouldn't matter." "Did you tell him about me?" The question escaped before I could stop it. He flinched. "No, and that's not fair to you, or him." He looked up, eyes raw. "I never meant to hurt you, Eli. You were a breath of something real in a life that's been suffocating me." I swallowed hard. Part of me wanted to believe him, to cling to the tenderness we'd shared. But another part, wiser now, saw the truth beneath his words. "You made me believe this was something it wasn't," I said quietly. "You let me trust you." "I know." His voice cracked. "I was selfish. I wanted to feel alive again. but you deserve more than half-truths." The sincerity in his tone only deepened the ache in my chest. I wanted to hate him, to cast him in shadow so the loss would be easier to bear. But sitting there, watching him unravel, I saw not a villain, but a flawed man caught in the web of his own making. "I can't do this," I whispered. The words tasted bitter, final. Mark's shoulders sagged. "I understand." An apology lingered in his gaze, but it wasn't enough. Not now. I stood, wrapping my arms around myself. The room seemed colder, emptier than before. As I reached the door, Mark spoke one last time. "For what it's worth, you reminded me what it feels like to be seen. I'll never forget that." I didn't reply. Some part of me wished him well. Another wanted to forget he ever existed. Outside, the city pulsed with indifferent life. The night air bit into my skin, sharp and cleansing. I walked aimlessly, thoughts churning, heart bruised but still beating. In the days that followed, grief washed over me in waves, sharp one moment, dull the next. I deleted his messages, archived our photos, trying to reclaim pieces of myself from the wreckage. Yet amid the pain, a strange clarity emerged. I had gone to the sauna seeking connection, never expecting it would teach me the harshest lesson. Of all, that trust is precious, and love without honesty is a hollow promise. Slowly, life resumed its rhythm. The ache lessened, though scars remained. I learned to sit with them, to honor the part of me that had dared to hope, and the part that now knew better. Weeks later, passing that familiar street, I paused. The sign above the sauna flickered, faintly in the dusk. I smiled, bittersweet. I had entered that place seeking belonging, believing I understood what I would find. I had been wrong. But in being wrong, I had discovered something deeper. My worth was not measured by another's affection, nor diminished by their betrayal. I had faced my first heartbreak and emerged, not unscathed, but unbroken. And that, I realized, was its own kind of victory.